All right, let's get right into my pick. So, Nightwing Volume 1, Leaping into the Light, written by Tom Taylor, with art by Bruno Redondo. He did the cover art, the interior art, and the inks, pencils and inks. We've also got some additional work from Adriana Lucas, Neil Edwards, Rick Leonardi, Andy Lanning, and Scott Hanna. They all contributed to this first volume. Unfortunately, I did read a little bit after this one. Bruno Redondo does not stick around, and he is a big part of why I like this one so much. And we'll talk about that. This is the Nightwing issues 78 through 83. So let's get, I think we talked about this in our She-Hulk episode, which if you have not checked out, earlier on our feed, we have the first episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. We're going to be continuing as each episode comes out. But on that show, I kind of went around the room and got everybody's take on Jennifer Walters. So I want to get everybody's take on Nightwing. I don't think I've ever talked to you guys about Nightwing. So let's start off with Marcus Seabury. What is your experience with Nightwing?
Okay, first of all, this is my first Robin.
Ah, yes.
70s, baby. You know, I was born in 76. So, like, when I was coming of age, this guy was Robin, soon to leave and become Nightwing, the Teen Titans and all that. But, like, this was the first guy that I knew as Robin. So I've grown up, watching him on, the Super Friends cartoon and on, like, Scooby-Doo Goes to the Movies and even reruns of the 60s Batman show. And like, I've just always liked Dick Grayson. I've always just liked his attitude. I like the fact that even though he's in Bloodhaven, which is kind of about as bad and lawless and crazy as Gotham, he still finds a likeness to his character. He doesn't, even though he's dealt with personal tragedy, he doesn't seem mired in the grimdark like his mentor Batman. What I normally say is, if you like Batman stories, you hate the fact he's kind of a manipulative, controlling jerk, read Nightwing.
I think that is a very good summation, Seabury. Mr. Eaton, what is your Nightwing background?
I just want to dovetailing off Seabury's point. He really is Batman without the baggage. But my background with Nightwing, obviously, you knew that the first Robin took his leave and started his own thing. Now, I had not read the Nightwing monthly stuff. I really mainly knew of Nightwing from his stuff with the Teen Titans and things like that.
Yes.
That's really kind of been my acknowledgement of it. I really like what Scott Snyder did with did in the White Knight with the character of Nightwing. Of course, I know that's different continuity, but I mean, he's a character that's always been around. Not always, but like me. So, Seabury, you said what year were you coming up from? 70.
Well, I was born in 6, so when I was conscious, it was Dick Grayson as Robin.
Right. See, I'm 85 model. So it's one of those things where I was probably getting comics here and there, but I wasn't just following sequentially until a little bit later on. And then of course, a little bit later on, pretty much when I started following comics in order where I would buy it month to month, I believe that Nightwing was already out of the picture and it was on to
Jason Todd.
Jason Todd, yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Jason Todd.
Yeah.
I'm sorry because I forgot to actually talk about Nightwing comics because yes, I have read them too. It wasn't just I know him as Robin. Like I read some of his first runs, like when Scott McDaniel was doing his art and Greg Land and like I have like individual issues of Nightwing Year One, which I need that trade to come back in print so I can buy it because right now it's kind of pricey.
Yeah.
Greg Land.
Was that with the disco wing? Was that with the high collar?
No.
No.
By the time he got a monthly, it was pretty much kind of the similar to what he's wearing now.
Okay.
Because like first it was the Disco Wing, in Teen Titans. Then around the time the book just became New Titans, he had a variation with like a smaller collar, but he kind of had like a little ponytail. That was also a hideous costume looking bad. Good old 90s. But
Yeah.
like, but but like by the time they gave him a straight up monthly, it was like I guess navy blue or black with like the lighter blue
Hmm.
trim.
Yeah.
They had kind of let go all of the disco stuff. That was like about what, like 95 maybe.
Gotcha. But the year one, that was his first year being Nightwing, so they had that
Oh yeah.
Disco Wing.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Now in that book, yeah. You see. I mean, shoot, like in the first issue, he's still Robin. It's like when Batman fires him from being Robin.
Gotcha. Yeah, I always, my upbringing with Dick Grayson has always been, oh, he was the first Robin, and he was in a lot of the Teen Titans, like the animated stuff, and then you knew him as the guy that they let him grow up. Basically, that's how I always knew him.
Right.
They let him age up. But I was never a big Nightwing fan growing up. Even in the Arkham games, when you got to play as Nightwing, his uh, what are they called? The his weapon that he uses,
It's
the
Screaming Sticks.
yeah, the screaming sticks. I was like, yeah, that's kind of not for me, kind of corny. But I got to tell you, boys, this book right here, Nightwing Leaping into the Light, made me a Nightwing fan. And I've always said that. I've said that going back to our podcast when we did Geekland, when we all lived in Memphis. I think there are no bad characters. There are only bad writers. And I've had numerous times where I didn't like a character. Daredevil's another example where growing up, I never liked Daredevil. And then when I read the Brian Michael Bendis run, when I read Mark Wade's run, when I read all of these guys, Brubaker's run, I was like, okay, Daredevil's one of my favorite characters. Like, I can't even
Oh,
think of not liking him.
I stand on that. Like I said, I might have used this example on the episode before. There was a character called Frenzy that was so freaking nothing to me in X-Men. She was just a horrible little one-note villain. Man, people started writing her and putting her in stuff. Then they kind of, had her do a little bit of a face turn. And you kind of, open up and like found out about her backstory. I was like, hey, like I've never cared about this character. So like I stand by that. You just need to find a writer to, give you a take on the character.
Right.
I mean, look at what Grant Morrison did for Animal Man,
Yes.
which is the hokiest of all superheroes.
Right.
Look at what Gail Simone did for Catman.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, on Secret Six. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
There's some great examples of just fantastic writers, and Brian K. Vaughan did this for me on a number of characters as well, and just them making you respect and appreciate those characters, and that's what Tom Taylor did for me on this run. And I've been kind of low key following Tom Taylor, but after this Nightwing run, and I'd heard everybody talking about it too, so I was like, oh shit, I got to check this out. So I finally got a chance, and I was not disappointed. I wasn't reading the Nightwing book before this, before the Tom Taylor stuff, and so this is where I jumped on, and now it's one of my favorite books coming out every week or every month, I should say. Oh, and a quick update, Eaton, were you talking about the Batman White Knight? Was that the Dick Grayson you said you had read before?
Yes.
Okay. Not Scott Snyder. I just looked it up. It's Sean Murphy.
Sean Murphy.
Yes. Sorry about that. Similar.
That's my bad.
S's. But yeah, so I am, like I said, in the words of Seabury, I'm a Nightwing stan from now on. I think this has just made me fall in love with the lightness. And that's even the name of this storyline, the leaping into the light and showing that fun side of it. And I got a lot of Peter Parker vibes of kind of a young Peter Parker character who's quipping, having fun, enjoying himself, and the humor of this book also, like, I was laughing almost every issue, uh, and it just made me feel good. So that's why I really love. And then I haven't even talked about Bruno Redondo, like the what he's doing in these the panel layouts is very similar, I thought, to what J.H. Williams was doing, J.H. Williams III on Batwoman, where it was taking something and using the panel layouts in a way that I hadn't seen before. And there's an issue that was not covered in this run, but is after this, where it's all one panel, like the entire issue is one panel. And I just saw that online. I was like, oh, that's why hasn't anybody done that before? They even had it all laid out as one page, and it was like, I don't know, like a mile long. But that is something that Bruno Redondo's art just elevated this book to another level. I just loved how dynamic it was, the action sequences, and just everything about it. Bruno Redondo was not on my radar. Now he's one of my favorite artists. So that's really why I liked Leaping into the Light so much. Mr. Eaton, like I said, I had recommended this book as my pick of the month. What did you think about Leaping into the Light?
So first, I want to talk about Bruno Redondo's art. To me, this artist is to Nightwing as Adrian Alphona was to Runaways.
Ah, yes.
And the reason I say that is because he is not somebody who is on my radar either. I'd never seen his work before, but I feel like that his artwork is as foundational to the tone of this book as Alphona's was, and Alphona was a co-creator of the Runaways.
Yes,
so
with Brian K. Vaughan.
Exactly. So I think that it's going to be one of those things where when we look at it, you know, when another artist takes over, I hope the quality doesn't decrease. I don't think it will as far as the writing, but it might not have that same feel as this did.
Yeah.
Now, from a story structure standpoint, I really love the storyline. I do feel like if you're somebody who is not up on Batman events, there might be some things that kind of throw you for a loop. Spoiler alert here. Alfred, I think is having passed away.
Yes.
I don't know if that's something that all comics fans know. It's something I tangentially heard about, but I hadn't, that must have been during the snap.
Yeah.
Where I was gone.
Right. Hadn't. Yeah. And it happens in the Tom King run of Batman. And yeah, it threw me for a loop. Same with Superman's Identity being out. It was like, wait a minute,
right.
what? Like these are things we've grown up, our core, of our comic essence. It's like, all right, Uncle Ben's dead. Nobody knows Superman's secret identity, and Alfred is Batman's butler. Like those are just core elements, and to see those foundations rocked, it's actually a really emotional issue if you ever get a chance to check out. But that is something that, like, you have to deal with the fallout of that heavy in this book.
Right, you do, and I think that might be a slight barrier to entry. But do not let that stop you from reading this trade, reading these issues, however you do it, because it is the best Bat Family writing that you'll see.
Yes.
It just is.
Yeah.
And that's not to the detriment of anybody else who's doing their thing on any other book. This feels fresh. It feels like a new voice for DC. It has a tone that I don't think any other DC book has right now. As best as I'm aware, anyway.
Yeah, not that I know of.
Right, and so it does feel tonally like a Marvel book. Tends to feel so much so, and I know we've talked about this off mic. I drew, as a matter of fact, my first comment to you after reading this book was, "This reminds me of Fraction and Aja's Hawkeye."
Yes.
Oh yeah, I get that. I get that for real.
100%. Yep.
Right. And so I really think that tone works for the character. I love that part about it. I really like the storyline. Like, Dick Grayson gets all this money, and I would like to think that within my own self, he's doing what I would do.
Yes.
He's he's aware of all these problems because he basically lives in DC Universe Detroit. That's what Bloodhaven is. Because I feel like Gotham is kind of New York mixed with Chicago, but this is
Yeah.
kind of Bloodhaven is a rough place. So he's immediately thinking like I can do everything. I could fix all of this.
Yes.
Where do I start? And I feel like that's where I would go to. So it's very relatable to me. It's very realistic. Normally, when you're dealing with a quote unquote superhero book, you're dealing with things beyond things you'd ever have to deal with. And I really like that this grounds Nightwing in a earth-based everyday logic. I really think that's a really cool choice.
Yeah. Seabury.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Seabury, your thoughts on Nightwing Volume 1 from Tom Taylor?
Man, I loved it. The writing, is funny, it's clever. And I mean, I love the fact that okay, yeah, Alfred's passed away, but he's left Nightwing his money. Nightwing is disgustingly rich, even more rich than Batman.
Yes.
And what did he do? He doesn't say, "Let me make a cave." He said, "Hey, the city's kind of trash, but I got you.
Yes.
Let's make it the city we want it to be." And I mean, that's just a Dick Grayson thing. And like, I'm gonna be honest. I have struggled with finding DC books to really hold me since New 52. Because I was probably buying about 8 to 10 DC books a month before New 52.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, because, like, one thing that was gone and didn't look like it was coming back in New 52 was the Dick Grayson, Barbara Gordon romance. Because I'm a Dick Grayson, Barbara Gordon shipper.
Yeah.
Okay, in my mind, they are OTP, one true parent. So, and like the first incarnations of New 52, Dick Grayson, he was promiscuous. He was just he was out there. He was a bit of a city boy. and I was like, but no, I like Dick and Barbara.
Yeah.
And they didn't give me them as a full-fledged couple, but they gave me hope in this.
Right.
Very much so.
Right. And like, I loved it. I loved Dick Grayson. I love Barbara Gordon. The time that I was watching again reruns of '60s Batman. So Barbara Gordon, I used to read like the first monthly Birds of series, late '90s, early 2000s. Always rooting for Barbara. Back then she was in the wheelchair. I was just like, come on, y'all. There's too much technology in the DC universe. This is dumb. So, post New 52, they finally got a walking canon, but I know she's semi-retired. But like, I don't know. I've always, well, not always, but like, probably the last 20 years, I've been more drawn to like Batman's associates than
Rather than Batman.
Yeah, because it's like with the Batman comic, I like take it or leave it, jump on, jump off. But I like read Nightwing for long runs. I read Tim Drake's last Robin series for long runs. I read Birds of Prey for long runs. I read Cassandra Cain's Batgirl for long runs, like, and even in more recent times, like I like Gotham Academy. I like We Are Robin. I want to buy this Batgirl's book with Barbara Gordon, Stephanie Brown, and Cassandra Cain and trade.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I tend to like everything about Gotham but Batman.
Well, that leads into Eaton's point about the Bat family. This book is very much like not only is it Dick Grayson, but the supporting cast, even Bitewing the dog, like that. It's just everyone in the book. I think is just really well done, painted with a nice stroke, and it just leaves you hopeful of this is what superhero comics, they can inspire us and they can want us, or leaving us wanting more and wanting to do better, leave the world a better place than we found it. So
it's definitely got a heart to it.
Yeah.
Yep. Another thing I wanted to speak on, even though now we're just basically talking about the positives, I did want to say that one slight qualm I had with the book.
Oh yes, you told me this off mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was waiting for this.
So, all right. Outside of the sort of internal struggle he's having with what to do with all this money, which is all well and good, you have this other sort of B plot. I would almost call it the B plot of how it's going to run up against the corruption that's pretty much completely melded into the city's political system, which I know is very outlandish nowadays that we would talk about, politics being corrupt. I know that's weird, but anyway, the plot point with the mayor, the newly elected mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, folks, being Dick Grayson's, is it basically half sister?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
For me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we needed it. Now, I don't think it ruined anything. This is a fantastic book that you should absolutely pick up and read. But that just kind of, it seemed easy to me, or it seemed like unnecessary. You know what I mean? That's my only qualm in an otherwise completely perfect 6 or 8 issues.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know what? I wasn't mad about it. Also, I had read about it beforehand. I was like, oh, you got to. Then I saw it. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
See, I didn't know at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hit me, kind of blindsided me as well. But I think similar to Seabury, I didn't. I just wanted to see where they were going with it, because the ending, however they choose to resolve it, I think is going to impact how I feel about the overall storyline with her.
Sure.
So yeah, I want to see where it goes. This is a good opening, kind of origin story for her, and seeing where it comes from. But yeah, I'm kind of like you also, Eaton, where if I haven't known about this family member for the last 30 years, this is kind of crazy that it's coming out of nowhere and all of a sudden he's got
so conveniently
family.
Right? For the person to be who it is. Yeah,
right.
That kind of felt off to me, but it didn't ruin anything for me as far as enjoyment. This was joy to read.
Yeah, I trust Tom Taylor where he as a writer, so we'll see where he's going in the next couple issues. But I got to say that the quality of the writing continues after this trade. It is hurt a little bit by the inconsistency of the artists, because they have a couple fill-in artists come in and out, and Bruno Redondo comes back later. And in fact, the current, if you're following him on Instagram or on Twitter, which I recommend because he shares a bunch of art, he's talking about a new creation that's coming out in Nightwing issue number 98, which has not come out yet, but it is Nightmite, who is the Batmite equivalent to Nightwing. And so I am very intrigued to see Nightmite. I want to see what that is and what comedy Tom Taylor has to bring out of that. So I'm excited about the future.
Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for him.
Yeah, but I've got a feeling that Nightmite's gonna soon learn that imping ain't easy.
Excellent,
but it's necessary.
And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this episode of the Comic Book Kaiju. Thank you very much for joining us on our Book of the Month Club. Nightwing Volume 1, Leaping into the Light. Like I said, I'll have a link in our description, in our show notes. You can check that out on Amazon. Right now, there's a nice sale on the digital version. I was telling these two before we started recording. It is $7.99 on Kindle and Comixology, $16.99 for the paperback. But this one might be one that I want to add to my collection physically. I bought it digitally, but I might want to add this to the collection. If they could get like an oversized version of it and get that art, that would be fantastic. But you can also check it out, like I said, on our show notes and in our description. If you would be so kind, don't forget to always share the Comic Book Kaiju, share the comic joy and love that we're trying to put out here on the Comic Book Kaiju. We just had a recent episode talking about She-Hulk. We're going to continue to talk about that show as it comes out. Hopefully, when Black Panther Wakanda Forever comes out, we will have a nice review of that for you. Also talking about different topics and things that are going on in the comic book industry on the Comic Book Kaiju. So continue to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. That's CBK Pod. I'm trying to put out some short form content as well on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all those places. So you can just find that on CBK Pod in most places. But on TikTok, it's Vactor Loves Comics, which used to be the name of this podcast before when I was just solo. But now I have my wonderful Southern friends here to join me each week on the Comic Book Kaiju. Speaking of those friends, Mr. Eaton, where can they find you on the internet this week?
At Chris Eaton on Twitter, and at Chris Eaton on TikTok. And you can also catch me along with yourself and Mr. Seabury on the Kick Out Kaiju as well.
Yeah. Mr. Seabury, where can the lovely folks find you this week?
All right, it's Ed Seabury on Twitter, at Marcus Seabury, that's MarkusScaberry on Instagram and TikTok. And also I'm a member of another podcast that's on hiatus, Black Nerd Power. You can find all our past episodes on the Kazukian app. That's KUDZUKIAN, the Kazukian app. And I do a movie review show in conjunction with On Location Memphis called Center Sundry. And you can find that on the On Location Memphis Facebook page and the On Location Memphis YouTube channel. As of this recording, my review of Bullet Train is out. I've got reviews of Emily the Criminal and Beast on the way.
Beautiful, Seabury. Very good. So we encourage you to follow all of us in all of those places. And for Mr. Chris Eaton and Marcus Seabury, I want to say that we love comics, and you should too.